kids, welcome to Stylus Rumble, Harmony and Rigging and Tutorial and Stuff Guide thing. First of all, I want to thank everyone who has been interested in my rig and some of you who have thrown some money towards the project, which is really awesome and it made me super excited. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to see any animation you guys do with my rig, so please share. Some of the 12 guys are having a bit of trouble with the kinematic output, so I'm going to upload a version that says no KI, no KO, kinematic output, no KO. I'll upload a version that has it taken out, and hopefully somebody can let me know if that works a little better, or if someone has a version from 12 that they've got working really well. If you want to email it to me, I can put that up there. And then other people can share in the joy of the 12 rig. And thanks for sharing this with people. I've gotten a big spike in traffic this week since I posted the rig, so that's making me really happy. We'll hit 10,000 someday, you guys, for sure. Alright, so I just finished editing and I wanted to throw in a little disclaimer. I thought this was going to be a really slow-paced video, but once I edited it, it felt really like shotgun explosion of information. Because once I took out the long pauses and the silences and stuff, it was just like, information. So I'm thinking I could do a couple additional videos where instead of going over the whole character at one time, I can just talk a little bit about the mechanics of each piece, like the arm swing, setting up a pendulum so you could practice that sort of stuff. A little bit about posing, character balance, and character rhythm and stuff like that. Let me know what you guys think and we'll figure out what to do for the next videos. But sorry if it is super fast. You can slow down your YouTube if I actually start speaking so fast that it's incomprehensible, because I've had people suggest that might be the case. Okay, so good luck. I hope it's not too bad. Bye. As a quick overview, the method I'm going to use is by stacking my keyframes very close, working big to small, and then spreading my keyframes out and then doing in between. So it's a little bit more of a traditional method, but because it's digital, you can tweak as you go and you're not so rigid, forced to stay in the keys that you start with. So it's a little bit of a layering method where you get the big broad stuff working first, and then you add a little bit of layer of detail and a little bit more detail until you've found something that you're really happy with. So carry on, and hopefully this is not too boring. Okay, so to start, if you don't have it, you need this book. You need the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams, because it's the be-all, end-all of classical animation and walk cycles and sneak cycles and just all the cycles. Did you see them? So if you're just starting to get into it, or you don't have this book, even if you've been doing it for ages, you need it. You need it. The big arm swings. It talks about the personality of a walk, not just the basic mechanics of it. It talks about how different characters walk. Like an old woman is going to walk a lot different from a 15-year-old boy. It's full of deliciousness. Every animator needs this book, period. Even you 3D guys, you need it too. Because when you're thinking about walk cycles, like I could spend probably 12 hours just talking about walk cycles and just animating walk cycles and talking about how, like, different personalities and stuff. So I'm going to do just bare bones, just a simple 3/4 walk cycle, because this is mostly what we use in production. All right, so I've got a few ground planes drawn in, and I'm going to do this exactly how I do it if I was animating it myself. So I've added a scene peg here, and this one I'm going to use to put my character where I want it to be in the scene. And I've created this place where I'm going to put my character and kind of set him up so that he's centered. I'm going to switch it out so that he's got his sideways feet. Because, this is the most popular walk you're going to see, is the 3/4 walk moving horizontally. And it's not super correct. Like if he was walking sideways, he would be like this. But this one is the most aesthetically pleasing view of characters. So in most animation, we try and keep them sort of 3/4 to the camera at all times, even if we have to kind of compromise reality a little bit to get that done. I only need this view. So what I'm going to do is extend my exposure, and I'm going to grab all these other views, cut them, paste them, and then I'm only going to grab the view I actually want. And then I'm going to control click this one and drag it so that it's the first one in the list, because if that's not there, it's going to try and tween if I get any tweens on the go there. So this way I just save myself from trying to escape into the other views. In classical animation, you have to figure out your exact keys, and you don't have a lot of wiggle room once you've decided on that. You have to think about your overlap and stuff along the way, and kind of include it within those initial decisions. But with a rigged animation like this, using a puppet, what you can do is sort of layer instead. So we can start really general on our keys. So I'm going to start with something that's super duper basic and is probably not going to look the greatest, but we're just banging down some stuff to get started. These lines here that I've included, this is where I'm thinking my toe is going to hit. So I'm thinking of this part here of the shoe, and that's going to come down, and I want that to hit here. So I'm trying to think about the perspective that I've chosen here. So here's the front of my toe. It's going to come directly to here. And using these lines and thinking about the technical issue is going to save you from getting limps, which is really easy to do if you're using these 3/4 views. And then here on the back, you want to think about the back of this heel, which is back here somewhere, coming down and hitting that line in a sensible place. So this one's gone back a little bit too far. Should be around there. And I'm starting with a little step because the bigger this step, the more difficult it is to actually get the animation working. So if you're doing your first walk cycle, I highly recommend just doing a little step, kind of a slow-paced, simple idea, and not getting yourself too bogged down. Because if you're doing a great big step like this, then your balance is a lot more difficult to figure out. Doing these little steps is a little bit easier. And while I'm doing this first initial key setup, I'm going to think a little bit about what personality I want this character to have. So I may want him to slouch a little bit more, bring him forward, and working from the top of my hierarchy here. Notice that whenever I'm selecting, say, the shoulder, I'm always starting on a piece of the character and then hitting BBB to go up to the highest part of my hierarchy instead of shift clicking, shift. And I go over that, why I do that sort of stuff in my workflow video, but it's just, it keeps your keys cleaner, you know where everything's going. So we've got this little mess happening here. All right, so this is what you probably see a junior do, is they get this far and they're like, okay, the arms and legs are sort of, I've got like my key poses here for my leg walk, but to get something that's really nice and feels really good, you need to incorporate the rest of the body as well. So I'm actually going to foreshorten this shoulder here and bring it forward. And then we're going to bring this back. Now we're getting the shoulders involved a little bit more. And this part here, where this line is coming almost up to the neck now, I want you to worry about that last. That's a really minor detail and not something that you really need to worry about at all in your first pass here, because it, like I said, you can layer this stuff as you go. So while I'm doing this, I'm trying to just think about how each piece of the body is going to be involved in the walk. So the next thing I'm going to look at is the hips. Now, when you're walking, whichever hip is in the back is going to be higher. It's kind of an awkward looking set of legs, but this part here, this butt cheek, is going to be higher than this butt cheek because the interaction here, the pelvis itself is actually going to tilt sideways, and this leg would be going forward like that. This leg here would be the back leg. Just watch how people walk and watch how their shoulders move when they move and how their head moves and how their hips move. Getting into animation is a lot about being a creeper. Life drawing is a super good exercise, paying attention to how different pieces of the body interact, all those classical techniques for getting good rhythm in the body. So as soon as you include these hips and these shoulders, you're starting to get a little bit more personality. Now this is staying super still up and down wise because we haven't included our passing positions yet. Here I'm gonna shrink this down because I want to get that body turn. So that's the secret to getting these body turns or these head turns, is just knowing that, like, when you're looking at the 3/4 body like this, it's going to look this shape. But then if you pull this part forward and you've got your shoulder coming in front of the body like this, you're going to be getting a more narrow portion of the body. And you don't have to be the best draftsman in the world to get to pay attention to these things and keep an eye, just keep them in your mind and think about how they work. Like maybe you can't draw them, but you still know that it happens, and you can use your squash and stretch to get that look. The feet, I'm not going to worry a huge amount about getting this foot peel. Obviously, if you're drawing it, you really have to get this stuff down early where your foot is peeling off the ground, or you're getting the foot slap here where the foot is about to hit. That's kind of the fun detail-y part, but we can put that off a little bit for now. So I have these keys stacked onto each other. I'm just going to move this one over, and I'm going to copy the first one and put it on frame 5. So by doing this, I'm starting with the 2 frames touching one another so that I can just pop back and forth using my hotkeys to see how they're working. Now I want to do the passing position in between these two. And because I've been working with my hierarchy, you can see it's sort of doing its own thing already. The hip tilt is taking care of itself. It's looking pretty decent. The shoulders are actually tweening in a decent enough way for now. And the arms are swinging and legs are swinging. So we're getting sort of like a really lame passing position here. But we can start to look at how this is actually going to work. And so I'm going to compress this down so that it's only getting from 1 to 4, because 5 is the same as 1. So that's how we can test our cycle. I'm going to put this down to 6 frames a second, just to play it a little bit slowly. And we can just play through that and see if we're feeling what we have so far. And I feel like I'm not really getting a big enough distance on these, so I may need to just fake it a little bit, put them out. The main concern is just making sure that we don't end up with a limp. Right, so that's not the worst thing in the world. It's starting to come along. I'm going to, on my master peg, this is where I'm putting all my master keys. So here I'm going to hit F6, F6, and I'm going to build these passing positions here. And that's one of the reasons why I like to have a scene peg, because now this is not collecting any information. It's just keeping things where they need to be, but I'm using this for all my major movements of the character and adding keys down here. And so I'm going to use this for my vertical movement so I can get the walk bounce. So I'm going to bring this one down. Think of like the Da Vinci guy. So we're going to do the passing position now, which is when the leg passes the other leg. But if both the legs are out this way, then they're going to be shorter towards the ground. Like this is where this foot is going to be, and this is where this foot is going to be. So in order for those to be touching the ground on these leg out positions is when we go down. So it's just thinking logically about how that's going to work to get that bounce. So here, our passing position, it's up and then it's down. And this is where I use these horizontal lines to make sure that my foot is staying relatively on the line that I've decided this is where you live. So now I'm just going frame by frame. And remember to copy frame 1 and frame 5 so that they're matching. So I'm just scrolling back and forth and making sure that the foot that should be planted on the ground is hitting the mark where it's supposed to be. All right, so the next thing, I'm going to think about my head bob. So this might come down here as we come up because your head is following the body. The head is kind of being dragged along by the body. So the body's going up, and then you have this neck and head, and they're kind of getting left behind. They're not going up as fast, so the body is going to move first, and then the neck and head are going to move after. But if I want this head to come down, to be dragged a little bit, I'm going to tilt it down, but you have to remember, because you're using a flat object, you're rotating this way. You're not actually rotating the head this way. So you have to think about, if you've got this head, like this, if you want it to come down so that it's looking down, you have to consider how the structure of the face is actually constructed like this. So the hair would come forward over the face like this. Again, you don't need to be the best draftsman in the world to do this, but you do need to know that it's happening. You need to understand how the basic perspective of a face work. I'm just going to incorporate a little bit of sneaky perspective in here. Bring your hair down a little bit. I'm just going to take this guy off and just look at him like this. So now you can see it a little bit more, how instead of his head just kind of rotating sort of like a weird cock to the side thing, I'm actually getting a little bit of a downward look. All right, so I don't want anything too crazy. Like I don't want him to like smack his head off his chest or anything. But little stuff like this, getting in a little bit of a head tilt, can add a lot of stuff. And also just using, like unplugging this head from the body so that I can isolate it and get my head tilt working fine. This is a good thing to be able to do, and it's one of the reasons I encourage animators to get even just a little bit into rigging, because I can confidently disconnect these and then reconnect them so that I can get something that's working a little bit better and not break anything. See, because when you can see, when it's the head is actually bobbing up and down with the rest of the body, it's very hard to get that stuff working well and see what you're doing. All right, so this leg is coming forward. Boop. I'm going to get these legs going a little bit better. And I'm going to have these arms drag as well. I'm going to hide frame 5 again, put this on 6 frames per second. All right, so we're starting already. We only have 4 keys so far, but it's already starting to get a little bit walk-like. And you can isolate pieces. You can use displays or you can deactivate stuff, whatever makes you happy. But we can take a look at these legs and see how we feel about just the legs working. I feel like I want my hips to tilt a little more on this side, get a little bit more movement out of them. It's not too bad. And then once we feel good about those keys, this is a fairly long process. I'm already a half hour into this, so I'm probably not going to get down to like the uber nitty gritty. But what I'm going to do once I get to this point and I'm happy, I'm going to spread the keys out again. All right, so this is at half speed now, and our character's starting to move along. The hair jiggle I'm not happy with at all, but that's a detail-y thing. That's something you could even leave until the very end of your cycle to get working. So my next step would be the keys in between here. So now I'm going to get a little bit more drag on these guys here, and I'm going to get I'm going to just push these right before the key. I want it to be a little bit farther along. So this is kind of like a connected pendulum, where this swings over, and then the lower leg, once it hits the end of the pendulum swing, is going to swing a little bit longer. So it's not quite coming forward yet. The upper leg's coming forward first, and then once it starts to get towards the end of its position, the lower leg is going to swing at a different pace. And on these passing positions, you might need to fake a little bit of perspective to get that foot off the ground. All right, so just by adding those little bits, we're starting to get a little bit more out of these legs already, just by putting in another frame in between our previous ones and getting a bit more swing and kick out of those lower legs. And it's at this stage that I would start worrying a little bit about getting these feet. So I'd come into this foot and I'd create a drawing substitution. I'm on 5. So I'm going to change that to 12. So now I'm going to create a toe planting foot. And now I can think about the perspective of the foot. So now I've got a little bit of a peel off foot here starting to come along. And we can even, on this frame, we can get a little bit more out of it there. So this is something that you get into towards the end. It's not something that you want to get into too early, mucking around with getting these toe plants and stuff. This is about the stage where I would start messing around with that level of detail, getting that foot working a little better. And always grabbing your frame and pasting it to the end so that your cycle gets maintained. Alright, so I've tweaked the head timing a little bit, just moving it over so that when the foot is just about to hits, the head is at the highest point, and then it's going down. So you hit the ground, and the head follows after. It's like a chain reaction from the head all the way to the feet. So this is, I mean, it's not a quick process, but this is how I tackle it. I start with the very vague stuff, the very general stuff, and then I slowly work down to the detailed stuff. So here I can just add a little bit of drag to this lower arm, so the arm's coming back, and then hits, and the hand takes a little bit longer to hit than the other stuff, and then drags back. And then always grab your first key and move it to the end. Boop. And with this lower arm, boom, boom, boom. You want to get a little bit of drag on there. And then once you feel happy with this level, you key all of these guys on your master peg, on your inside peg here, whichever one you're using to keep your stuff together with, and you spread it out again. Boop. Now all these I'm taking and spreading out so that they're on 2s, and we're up to 17 frames, so this is going to be a pretty fast walk cycle if I leave it. I'm going to put on stop motion keyframes, set it on 24 frames per second. Just take a quick look. Okay, so my head is obviously having some serious problems. Alright, so I've mucked around again, putting some frames down in between the previous frames until I feel good about what's happening. I put in some of the extra feet now so that I'm getting the peel foot on this back leg as well as the front leg. I've brought the shoulders down and up. So if you're looking at a character walking, the back hip is going to be the higher hip like this, and the front hip is going to be lower. Brilliant drawing right there. And if your hips are going this way, your shoulders are going this way. So this leg is coming forward, this arm is coming forward, and this shoulder's down. This arm is going back, and it's going to be up. You can count on body balance to figure out some of these, how these should be working, how it's going to look like it's working right. My head, it's probably a little bit bouncy for what it is, but yeah, it's fine. It's getting the job done. And then once I feel good about that, like if this is on 12 frames per second, I'm going to put it up to full speed. So here it's a little bit too fast for a walk. So I'm again going to go to the top of my hierarchy and slam down keys, set it to motion tweens. Yeah, his head wobble's not super great, but this is taking too long. So I'm just going to slam down keys on every single place. Beep, 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 beep. And then I'm going to spread each of them out. Now, this is a good choice for this type of just generic walk cycle. You don't necessarily need to keep them super evenly spaced like this. Now I've got, slow walk. God, that head tick. Tick, tick, tick. Remember the sound effect method. Do you want your head to do the tick, tick, tick? You probably don't, so that would need tweaking here. But this is all right. It's getting the job done for what we're doing. Using this method of stacking your keys very closely and then spacing them and then figuring out what happens in between. It's a little bit of the old school method and just using your computer to your advantage. So you don't necessarily need to get all those details in on the first round of keys. You can add them in as you go. And even now, I could go along and do the hair a little bit better so that we're getting some follow-through action. Obviously, this head needs to be addressed. Tick, tick. It's driving me. And then this is the type of walk cycle you would get in a studio, most likely, because it's the best thing for a reuse situation. And so if you got this in a studio, the way that I like to do it is just do this so I know exactly where my foot is on my plant. And then I'd create a translate peg. Which one did I just create? I'm going to call this my translate. And now as he moves along to the next big position like this, I'm just going to slide him along like that. And then on the next one until it plants. And then we're going to bring our toe up. And it's staggering. You can see it's stuttering because my tween here is on 1s and my character is on 2s. But that's something we can tidy up as we go. And then once this foot is planted, so that's where this is going to be, we want to make sure that back foot is lined up. And this is why as I suggest, I like to select from in here, because now I know exactly what I'm selected on. I'm definitely putting my translate on the translate peg that I've decided on. And now I'm going to just use a different color to figure out where this foot is going to be. And however long this cycle needs to be, or however far he needs to go, we're just going to move our keyframes that we've got before. And we're going to paste our cycle from our master peg here, because that's where all our keys are. Copy. And we know that key 1 and key 33, because this is a super slow walk cycle, are the same. So we select that key and then paste on top of it. And then you go in between after and tidy up the in-betweens here. Just making sure that when you're putting down your frames, they're on odd numbers. because when you set this to 2s, that's where your character's going to be. And some of them will work out on their own. You won't need to tweak them at all. Some walk cycles you're going to have to spend a lot of time really tweaking those foot plants. That's just how animation works. Animation is a tedious process. I'm sure there was someone out there expecting me to show you like a 10-minute walk cycle, but that's just not how animation tends to work. If you want character to have some personality, a little bit of good lookingness. See? So now my feet are planting. The character's kind of slowly puttering along there. It might take you a little while to get this working, but that's just kind of the aim of the game. So with side views, you may be able to get away with just setting a point A, point B, and it might walk at a pace that is going to jive with the ground plane. But with these 3/4 front sort of sideways walks, it's going to be pretty surprising if you can set it up so it just automatically tweens really well. Alright, so I'm not going to keep going. I've been at this for an hour. And there's still a lot more that could be done with this. This back arm is not working as well, getting as much as the front arm. This head tick is bothering me. But hopefully this is giving an idea of just how you can layer your animation. So start with the broadest motion first, and then moving on to the next level. And once you have 5 frames, you can put fewer in between. So you could have, say, 2 frames going here. And then 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. So then you're going to have 13 frames instead of this very slow walk by spacing out your keys a little bit differently and playing with the timing of your walk. That's something that you really need to play around with and explore as you go. These slow walks are probably the simplest way because it's just spread your keys and then do a half, spread in half, and spread in half. I feel like this is going to be a boring video because animation is not a fast hobby. It's never going to be a really fast thing where you get crazy good results in just an hour. If you're new to animation and you feel like, oh, you know, I just spent 4 hours on this and it looks terrible, like that's how it works. On a really elaborate scene, I mean, it's going to take a long time. Even just this walk cycle, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and it would probably take me 2 or 3 hours to get something that I'm really happy with, just for a simple cycle. And this doesn't even have any real big personality, because if you're doing a walk cycle, this guy's just like a really super boring walk, but you could have someone who really puts their whole body into it, and they're having a great time, and, you know, they're throwing their legs way up there. Or you could have someone who's really miserable, and they're just, you know, having the worst day. And so they're dragging, their arms are just straight down and just slowly walking along. Big lady like this with teeny tiny little feet. So she's there with her little purse or whatever. She's gonna go to the store, grab herself a treat. And she has little teeny tiny feet. So this is going to have a very different look like this than, you know, some big lanky. Like this guy's got quite long legs, but you could have a guy with a little torso like this, and he has great big long legs like that. He's going to walk differently altogether too. So there's a whole huge world of walk cycles, and this is just like the fraction of the beginning of looking into it. If I can find some time soon, I want to try and collect some walk cycles from different animated shows and see if I can talk about different styles of animation and stuff, but hopefully you got something out of this. I don't know. I'll try my best to edit it into something interesting. Alright, so thanks for dropping by. And please share if you've done anything with my rig. I'm excited to see some animations out there. Like, share, subscribe, all those things that people ask you to do, and I will see you in the next episode, which will be a mystery video.